I thrifted a $5 cashmere sweater and I unraveled it to harvest the yarn to reknit it into a sweater that doesn't have moth holes or light fading and fits me a little bit better than the original sweater did. This is all the yarn that I was able to get from that sweater, and as we talked about last time, between the cost of the original sweater and the time it took to unravel it, it's about $45, $46, which on average, if I bought it new, would actually cost me about $110. I will be using my knitting machine to reknit this up. I had some questions about gauge and the weight of the yarn, so why don't I first go ahead and wind this up into balls of yarn and we can discuss it as I am making the gauge swatch on my knitting machine. I've got my yarn all caked up now. If you're interested in my knitting machines, I've got a few playlists of me making sweaters with my knitting machine. This is actually a sweater from an unraveled other thrifted sweater that I then reknit on this knitting machine. I had some questions about the weight of this yarn, and machine made, commercially knit, machine-made sweaters. That's a lot of adjectives. I don't know what is the right order. They are usually made with incredibly thin yarn. So when I hold it up to my little yarn gauge here, it's lace, potentially cobweb weight. And that is very, very light, especially to knit with. But usually when I unravel these commercially knit sweaters, I will hold at least 2 of the threads together. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I have enough for the pattern I'm planning on making. I know you might be wondering, what sweater am I planning on knitting? I will show it to you after we hit gauge, hopefully, with our gauge swatch here. And there's our gauge swatch. So let's measure and see which tension is the right tension for about 7.5 stitches per inch. So based on my gauge swatch, I think we are going to be at about tension 5, but now I think I can finally show you the exact pattern that I want to knit up now. Before we continue from here, I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Scrolly. I recently checked the screen time on my phone and the results were honestly horrifying. It was way higher than I expected. I always kind of thought that because I knit and weave and crochet and spin that those crafts would naturally keep me off my phone, but unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. It was still very easy for me to pick up my phone and start scrolling. I've also tried digital blockers before, but the problem is that they're really, really easy to override. I just tap a button to disable the block and I'm scrolling again. So that's why Scrolly is really helpful to me, because it adds a physical step. It is a small little tag that works with their app to block distracting apps on your phone. First, in the Scrolly app, you choose which apps or websites you want to block. Things like Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, whatever pulls you in. Then you tap the Scrolly tag to your phone. And third, those apps now stay blocked so you can focus on what you actually want to be doing until you tap the Scrolly tag back again to unlock them. For me, the key thing is that I keep the Scrolly tag in a drawer in another room. So if I want to unlock those apps, I actually have to physically go get it. I have to get up and go get the Scrolly to tap it on my phone, which makes it a lot harder to just mindlessly undo the block. If you'd like to try this, I've put a link in the description and you can use my code ENGINEERINGKNITS to get 10% off. Thank you again to Scrolly for sponsoring today's video and helping make videos like this even possible. So now let's get back to looking at which exact sweater pattern we're going to use for reknitting our unraveled sweater. I don't even really know where to start. Between the last clip and this one, this room might be a little bit echoey, and that's because so much has happened. I've moved. So welcome to my new space. This is just one of the new spaces where I'll be doing my work, which is really exciting. I'm also just getting over being sick, so please excuse my voice too. I think we had just done a gauge swatch with doubly held yarn, but I realized that we're coming up on springtime and cashmere is warm. It's soft, but it is definitely warm. And this is the sweater pattern that I chose is not exactly one that I would say keeps you warm. It's a little bit more off the shoulder. Have I revealed the sweater pattern yet? What we're going to be making? It is a 1950s off the shoulder sweater, which I think is so cute. But again, this isn't really a sweater pattern that I would say I would wear on a cold night. So as I was re-looking at that gauge swatch that I knit, I kind of wanted to test out what just a singly held yarn gauge swatch would look like. I've created 2 and I think I like it better. I like the drape better. I like the look better. It's a little airy and see-through, but I think that serves that sweater design a little bit better. I'm gonna be honest, I did a poor job of recording what I did here, so I don't fully know what tension I knit these gauge swatches at. So I'm gonna redo the tension of these gauge swatches. All right, gauge swatch time again, I guess. Okay, after measuring out our gauge swatch, it looks like we're going to be just at about like 8.5 stitches an inch here, which is tighter than the original gauge. But I think if I knit it in the largest size according to the pattern, it will end up fitting me. Now I have set up my knitting machine on my desk here in my new room. It's been a very long time for me since I have used this machine and the ribber. I should probably clean it and oil it, but I don't know where my knitting machine oil is at the moment. We are still unpacking a little bit. I also need to go find the manual because it's been a while since I set this up, but that's okay. That's what the instruction manuals are for, right? I think I'm missing the thingies that go in. Where could that be? I think these are it. Good news. Step 1, the ribber is now attached. I have the instructions on my phone. I couldn't find the book, but found them on my phone. So now we want to cast on. Cross your fingers for me here. I feel like this isn't right. I need to change this. I think this is the wrong one. And I don't think I have the right one is not on me. Darn. Could it be this one? Hold on. We might have a little bit of luck. It's not that one. Could it be this one? Oh my goodness, I just got lucky. And then the bottom carriage. Wait, is this the right one? Like it doesn't connect with the bottom carriage. Oh, okay, it's the right one. It just wasn't on the bed properly. Okay, now how do we do the rest of the cast on? Okay, we are going to cast on 120 stitches in knit 1 purl 1 ribbing. I realize that you probably can't see very well what I'm doing, but I am also just trying really hard not to mess this up. So move the carriage from right to left. This causes like a little zigzag that we're going to hang our cast on comb. So let me show you. Just want to show you this cute little zigzag. We're going to hang our cast on comb into that. And now we're supposed to knit till we reach 3.5 inches. I'd say it's about 11 rows per inch, maybe 40 rows? 40 rows for the bottom ribbing. So let's see, cross your fingers for me that this is going to work. And that was 40 rows of ribbing. So we should have just over 3.5 inches of ribbing hanging on the back side. We just did 40 rows of knitting in like less than a minute. That is incredible. And now we're gonna increase 1 stitch each end. We're gonna do it every 8 rows. The other thing is we are going to be switching to stockinette stitch, which means we don't need the ribber stitch to be working anymore. We want all the stitches to be on just the main bed. What we have to do is we have to transfer all these stitches, all of them, from the ribber bed to the main bed. I might time lapse you through this one just so you can see the result, unless something really terrible happens, which, oh my God, now what's wood in here? I'm knocking on wood, here we go. And then for the second piece, I might walk you through and show you up close. So we have made it to the point of the neck opening. Sorry for any harsh light coming in. We're still figuring out this new space. There's 2 things I'm currently concerned about. The first is that with the weights stretching out the unraveled wool, this piece is long. The other thing is that with a neck opening, what you typically do when you knit by hand is you knit across, one half, you bind off for the neck opening, and then you knit on this shoulder on this bit, and then you knit on this shoulder on this bit. You can do this on the knitting machine. I have done it before, but this is where things can can get a little dicey, and it's where I've made the most mistakes in the past. So how do we best want to do this? So if I put this back and forth, and I think I'm best I don't know if I can explain this fully very well, but what we're basically gonna do is we're gonna knit back and forth on only the shoulder stitches on this side, and we're gonna put everything else on hold. Putting it on hold is a setting on the carriage. This machine I got from Japan, so all the labels are in Japanese. So I have to make sure, based on the instruction book that I have and what I am looking at, that I'm selecting the right options. So I think that is the right thing. We'll have to see. Ready? Hold your breath. If everything drops off, well, no, it wasn't it. That was correct. I am a bit stressed, I'm not gonna lie, at this process. So I'm just gonna focus. I actually had a snack before this because I realized like I need my brain to have energy to think about this. Machine knitting is easier on my hands, my joints, and my wrists, but it is way harder on my focus and my brain. Like I'm thinking a lot more. I will see you, hopefully, fingers crossed, when this sleeve is done. It has now fully gotten dark, so we're just by some pretty poor lighting. I'm sorry about that. But one sleeve is done. I'm gonna work on the next sleeve and get this thing off the machine. I'll probably show it to you when it's off the machine. That was the last stitch cast off. The second sleeve gave me a few more problems because I think my focus and concentration just kind of lacked, and I put 2 holes in my work that I'm gonna have to darn. Before I leave, I'm gonna do the very satisfying thing of taking it off of the cast on comb. So let's do that together, shall we? There it goes. And here's the piece off. We'll take a closer look at this tomorrow. And it's the next morning, and I am so excited to talk a little bit more about what we did yesterday. So I'm gonna lay this piece out on the ground so you can see. So the shape of this piece is actually the back and the sleeves together. So this is a unique construction style that I've seen in some 1950s patterns. I don't think I've ever knit one, even by hand, in this way. So this will be my first time testing this construction out. You might be seeing some extra kind of like frazzly pieces, and I did manage to put 2 holes into this work. Today we're gonna do the front, which is very similar to the back. There's just a little bit of difference in the neckline shaping, I believe. And let me grab my phone so I can start a stopwatch. I have to be honest, I have been putting off doing the front part today because I'm just so nervous that I'm gonna mess this up. We're gonna cast on 120 stitches again. So let me start the stopwatch. This is going to be timing the cast on and the ribbing. The ribber is what forms purl stitches. The main bed basically only does knit stitches, and the ribber is what allows you to do purl and knit stitches in the same row. I've just finished creating the perfect selvage, so we're just at the bottom now, and about 6, almost 7 minutes have passed. So now it's time for the ribbing, and we did 40 rows of ribbing at the bottom, right? Yes, so 40 rows. Here we go. Let's see how long this takes. We have a little bit of an iffy stitch on the right side here. Let's see what happened. To me, it feels like there's no tension on the stitches on the right-hand side. Yep, there was no tension on the right side because the cast-on comb was hung up. So the stitches were in a precarious position on the right-hand side here. We almost lost everything. Thankfully, we didn't. Oh, and we lost stitches in the middle. Yep, we're gonna have to restart. See what happened here? We dropped stitches down, and I think that was from trying to fix what was going on the right-hand side here. Ooh, we skipped a lot of stitches on that one. And when I say that, I wonder if you guys are wondering what I mean. So let me show you what I can see of what you're supposed to see and what's happening. And I might have to step away for a second because I don't understand why this is happening, which is a bit frustrating. So let me show you. So here's a section of knitting like I'm expecting to see. On every needle on the top, there is a stitch, a loop. On every needle on the bottom, there's a stitch, a loop. The last time that I passed the carriage back and forth, I started to see a whole lot of that. Do you see all those gaps? That means that all those stitches have now dropped from the main bed and are unraveling down. And it's only on the main bed that that's happening. Back for another try. I have a theory on what could be causing it. We're already one row further than last time. I'm afraid to even breathe right now. We did it. We made it to row 40. I feel like I can let out a big breath. That was almost exactly 6 minutes. So to get to casting on in the ribbing, when it works, it's 6 minutes. Adding in the 15 minutes of trouble, it's over 20 minutes now at this point, which is still quite quick. I have a hunch of what happened, right? Those of you who are interested. Basically, I can set the carriage here to knit when you're only going in a particular direction. And to make the perfect selvage, you want to, when you're going right to left, to knit only on the main bed. And when you're going the opposite way, you want it to only knit on the river bed for 3 rows. And then you reset it so then it's not just doing that, it's knitting in both directions. This is a machine from maybe the 80s, and I did clean and oil it, but there are some bits in here that are a bit sticky. So when I redo the settings on this carriage, I have noticed in the past that sometimes the channels get a little gunked up, and what I did differently this time is that I pressed a bunch of them to kind of activate the levers inside the carriage a few times to make sure that it did fully reset. So that was kind of my theory on it. Can't be for sure, but it worked this time. And I remember doing that last night when I cast on, not on purpose, but because I forgot how to reset the set cams. And so it's a theory. Is it right? I have no idea. But 21 minutes in, we are done with the cast on and 40 rows of ribbing. So the next bit now is just in stockinette. But in order to have it stockinette, we have to move all the stitches from the river onto the main bed. I do have a tool that is technically supposed to automatically move all the stitches from the river onto the main bed by just passing it across once. I've tried using it in the past, and every single time all the stitches fell off. After the amount of headache that I had getting to this point, I am not willing to risk it, so I'm going to do that manually. So I'm going to grab my little river transfer tool and just get to work. It's going to take a while, but I will time it and let you know how long it took. And now we're going to work on the stockinette section of our sweater. We're just going to move the ribbon out of the way as much as you can without fully removing it from the machine. So what we want to do is on every 8th row, or just before on every 8th row, we're going to increase 1. So I'm going to knit 7 rows of stockinette only, so this should just be on the main bed. And now we're going to increase 1. There's multiple ways that you can increase on a knitting machine. The way that I like to do it is to move the outer stitch 1 needle to the right, and then pick up the bar from underneath the remaining stitch and put that in place. I find that to be a pretty invisible increase in the final knitting. Oh, cross your fingers for me that we continue to go well here. Okay, so now the increases are done on the body. That's taken me another 8 minutes. Now we have to knit straight, I think. For the front, we actually want to stop 1.5 inches from the sleeve. Okay, we are now at 11 minutes and we are done all the way up into the sleeve. So now we're going to cast on the extra stitches to make that kind of T shape for our top. We're about 7 minutes in from starting the sleeves, and a lot of these instructions are like, do this extra shaping while simultaneously keeping this and also simultaneously doing that. So I'm going to reread these instructions like 3 times to make sure I'm not missing any instructions. minutes, we're done with one sleeve. I have to do the other sleeve in the neckline, but like a headache is setting in and a whole lot of other stuff, so I'm actually going to take a break, and I will see you back after a little bit of a break to do the other sleeve and neckline. Okay, we're back from taking a little bit of a break. I should hopefully have the microphone set up correctly this time. Honestly, the knitting machine, especially the end parts of these sweaters around the shoulders and all that shaping in the neckline, takes so much focus. I'm so sorry that other stuff kind of loses the focus. We're gonna work on the second shoulders. I'm just gonna fast forward us unless something terrible happens, and let's cross our fingers that that's not the case, and I just see you when the sleeve is done and we've shaped the other shoulder, and I can tell you how long it's taken us. I think I just did something wrong. Hold on. You know that sinking feeling when you feel like you've done something wrong and you're not quite sure? Just had the sinking feeling. So let me read through the instructions again. I should have read through the instructions more. Oh no, please cross your fingers for me right now that I didn't do something wrong. Oh, I did. Did I? Hold on. I might not have. No, I don't think I did. I don't think I did. Oh, this is really confusing. Oh no. Okay. I just increased at the wrong spot, but I didn't cast off at the wrong spot. So that's not quite as bad. I missed the increase by 1 row. I don't think I'm explaining any of this very well, but basically there's a lot of ways that this could get messed up if you didn't track it well enough, and I for sure did not. Okay, but I did do something else wrong. I missed the instructions that are like, at the same time, bind off 3 stitches on the neck side. We're gonna unknit. If it unravels now, we might have to start this entire piece over. The front is off the machine. I hit pause. It's funny, it's almost exactly an hour to do the second shoulder. That was a test of my patience. You can see it's definitely more of a scoop than in the back. We are not quite done knitting all the pieces yet though. The front and back yoke and sleeve bands, my machine bed is only 200 stitches wide, so I'm going to have to split those into 2, I think. This might be another section that I just kind of jump over because my patience is running out. I'm so sorry, but it really is. I hope I'm not the only one that sometimes needs floor time after finishing a particularly difficult task. I think that I'm done, or at least mostly done, but yeah, I'm off to do some blocking, some repairs, and then we'll talk about how everything kind of comes together. I'm so tired. Here are some of the pieces that I have to seam together. This is the front and the back, and you can kind of see the shaping of this a little bit better. And the way that we are going to sew them together is by using my wonderful linker. I got this machine a while ago, I think years ago now, but this will be the first time I get to use it. And it's basically a way to chain stitch your knit pieces together. And these are actually used in factory settings. I've done multiple tours of knitting factories now, and they all use linkers that look almost exactly like this, maybe a little bit more automatic rather than manual. But the basic way that you use it is that you hang your knit pieces that you want to sew together or seam together on these little spikes. They're not very sharp, but I wouldn't want to fall into them, let's just say. And you are sewing this together, so you want to put them on their right sides together. So you can really take the time here to match up any shaping or the start and stop of these knit pieces. It is really advantageous to use this over a sewing machine because things don't really slide away from each other, because knitting is just so movable and bendy and flexible, which is great, but not so great for sewing. So then you can use the hang crank for mine model of linker to chain stitch the pieces together, and this is what it ends up looking like. It is such a professional finish and is basically the exact same finish that I picked apart to unravel the thrifted sweater and harvest the yarn for this. So it kind of feels like a full circle moment. That was just putting the yokes together. We still have to attach the fronts and backs, which are quite large pieces. So we still have a bit of linking to do. So why don't I get that done, and we'll see each other when it's mostly linked together. Spoiler, not everything went together the way that it should have, so we've got some other discussions to have still. I have just sewn together or linked together all of the button bands, or not button bands, what are they? Sorry, I'm just watching Claude of Retro Claude working on button bands on her knitting machine, so that's all that's on my mind. This is the yoke, and it's way too big. This is way too big. I've also tried on the sweater. It's currently on a linker. Let me take it off. And it is also, let's say, on the revealing side when I wear it, because this opening is quite wide and it sinks down, which can be fixed with elastic, but I do think this definitely needs that fold over edge, and I think the yoke is done separately so that you get the right side of the knitting on the fold over, if that makes sense. If you knit this longer in the same orientation and then fold it over, you get the wrong side of the stockinette showing. So I've been back and forth thinking about exactly what to do, and it would have been better to do this before I linked everything together. What I'm thinking of doing is rehanging this on my knitting machine and knitting the yoke that way. What I'm going to do, and I'm sorry if any of you want to see more of the details of this, but this is just kind of the bandwidth that I have at the moment. I'm going to jump forward to hopefully when I can relink the shoulders together after I've knit the yokes in place rather than separately and trying to link it on, because that's not working right now. I'll see you in a second. I have knit up the yoke and it's rolled up because it's stockinette stitch, so I'm going to have to iron it down. You can also see it's supposed to be off the shoulder, but it should kind of hold itself in place. The original design has this like lastex elastic thread that they crochet on the bottom of the fold over yoke in order to kind of, I think, give it that elastic to hold it on over your shoulders. I have the thread. I actually found original 1950s lastex thread in the right color, but I can't find any crochet hooks right now. I moved. Other thing is you can probably tell, I ended up, only using one thread of yarn, and that was probably the right call because I only have like less than half of this ball left, and that's it. I don't have any more yarn left, so if I would have doubled up, I don't think I would have made it this far, but it is quite see-through. So let me iron this down and let me thread some clear elastic through the top to kind of tighten this up a little bit. And hope that that helps. So I guess the next time you see me will be the final reveal of this top. So this is what it looks like right now. So let's see if I can make some improvements to make this wearable before the final reveal. Okay, so would I call this project a success? And I think honestly, I never want to call something necessarily outright a failure, but this was a struggle for me. The process wasn't very relaxing because it's been a while since I've done any kind of knitting. I'm also in the middle of a move. I think it's just like, and the end result isn't exactly what I was hoping to get either, but I'm glad that I did it because it reminded me of like how useful the knitting machine is to me, and when things are working generally okay, how much I do enjoy working on it. It is a little frustrating sometimes when you have this final vision of a project in mind and you don't come anywhere close to it, even though you were hoping to maybe be able to get somewhat close to that design. I think if I did it again, I would be able to potentially, but there was just so many variables involved. And I think also this top, I think, is in a much better configuration like this with a little ruffly collar. I did pull the shoulders and sleeves down to wear it in the way that it's shown on the original pattern design. But the problem is that this is kind of like a T construction. So you end up with extra fabric in the armpit that you wouldn't if you did set-in sleeves. And when you pull the shoulders down, that's even more extra fabric underneath the armpits than there would be when you have set-in sleeves. I've owned tops that are meant to be worn off the shoulder, and it's almost like you cut out, like instead of the sleeves going this way, they go this way, not vertically, but horizontally. And then I just couldn't figure out the yoke. It could be that it's because I don't have, the crocheted edge with the elastic on it. I think overall, I'm glad I did it, but it was harder than I was expecting it to be. What do you think?
Was it worth it, or should I have maybe saved the yarn to use for something else or tried a pattern that might have worked better with the unraveled yarn? Or do you think that this ended up being a decent enough top that I can make some use out of the unraveled sweater and yarn that I have? I know that we all have very limited time, so thank you for spending some of it with me today. If you enjoyed this video, then there might be another one here that you might like to watch as well. Thank you again so much, and I hope that I get to see you again very, very soon. Bye!